Welcome to This Week in Missouri Politics from the United States Capitol in Washington, D.C., joined by Garrett Hawkins, the president of the Missouri Farm Bureau, and our host for this, United States Senator Eric Schmitt. Eric, it's been cool. You were the first guest on This Week in Missouri Politics. Yeah. We're honored to be out here. Bond, Blunt, Barton, Blair, it is major shoes that you fill and a major responsibility for the state of Missouri. Congratulations on year 3?
Year 3. Yep, the start of year 3. And in a very different kind of year now with a big difference with having a Republican administration, and being in the majority in the Senate. My first 2 years, was in the minority. Joe Biden's in office. So I think the relationships, with President Trump and J.D. Vance and I are close, and Pete Hegseth, with the Department of Defense and being on Armed Services, and Pam Bondi at DOJ, and John Sauer is going to be the Solicitor General, and Cash Patel. So RFK Jr., Tulsi Gabbard, all these people that you've gotten to know and get to work with, there's a lot of ways you can help Missouri now that I think will be a good thing.
Let's just start off. Garrett, you brought the Farm Bureau to town. You brought everybody from back home out to Washington for the week. What's going on?
I mean, they're hardcore, given the weather at home is great. Taking time away from the farm to be here in D.C. to talk about our priority issues, everything from getting a farm bill done, right, Senator, to the importance of not jumping off the tax cliff this year, obviously getting the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act renewed. All of those things are critical as we think about farming, small business, and how we support Missouri families.
So tell me, Senator, where's the Farm Bill at?
Well, the Senator Bozeman, who we actually brought into Missouri about a year ago to kind of hear from the ag community in Missouri, we tried to do that with Roger Wicker, who's the chairman of the Armed Services Committee. We did the same thing in Missouri, but it's in committee. They were not able, obviously, last year the Democrats didn't have much of an appetite to move that, but I think we're in stages of we did all the high-profile confirmations. We've got then this reconciliation package, and Garrett talked about the tax reform stuff. And then there's also going to be other legislation, I think, that comes to the floor this year, and the Farm Bill, I would think, would be included in that. So that's a good thing. We'll see what it ultimately looks like. But I think that people are committed to making sure that the farmers have the resources that they need.
So it looks like I'm sure if you're a United States Senator, you know President Trump on some level. It looks like you have a pretty special relationship with the president. What is that relationship like?
I feel pretty fortunate. We get to play golf together, which is kind of fun. I, went to the Super Bowl on Air Force One at Presidential Motorcade. I highly recommend if you're going to go to a sporting event, roll in like that. But it's a relationship that's developed over time. I feel like I've just tried to be supportive. I was one of the earlier endorsers. He loves Missouri. You get to see the other side of him, the sense of humor. And also, he's very committed to this country moving forward. I think he fully recognizes, and we talked about it on the golf course last time, was, having a non-consecutive term, like, he was president, wasn't president again, there's a perspective that comes with that. I think he was able to assemble a team, differently. He has a very clear idea of what he wants to do this time and what he wants his legacy to be. And he really believes in this country, and he thinks that, if we implement these policies and do the work that we're supposed to do here, is we can have a golden age for the country. So for me, it's just, I don't know how to describe it. It's just, I feel very fortunate to have developed that relationship with him over a period of years, and to work with the president of the United States and know that when, we give President Trump a call on a Tuesday night, I mean, he's going to answer. He's very accessible and have a conversation about the things that are important to Missouri. So it's very gratifying, and I'm very grateful.
You've talked a lot about regulations. It does feel like no matter what you do on a farm, some city slicker wants to put their nose in it.
Exactly right. We've seen that the last 4 years. We saw that during the 8 years of the Obama
I don't
administration.
see farmers going to the ghetto and telling city people how to live. Do you? But, boy, they want to come to the farm and tell real folks how to live.
They do, but I have high hopes, I think, over the next few years as to what can be done. Fortunately, we have a senator sitting right here who's on the front lines of looking at the world post-Chevron doctrine and getting Congress back in the place of actually directing with more specificity how these agencies carry out regulations. So I think it's an exciting time as we think about the opportunity for regulatory reform. Obviously, the agenda is huge, but my goodness, the people are in the right spots, I think, to truly make a difference.
I think that's actually one of the things that's kind of unique about this 4 years, too, is that typically presidents, both parties, continue to kind of grow that administrative state because it kind of serves them. You actually have a president now that put reformers in on the inside, including Brooke Rollins, the Ag Secretary. And so I think the combination of the work that we're doing on this post-Chevron working group and saying what kind of regulatory reform is going to matter to people who are really like working the land and working with their hands and all that kind of stuff. What do we need to do to take away this strong arm that the federal government has built up over a period of years? So I think we're doing it on the legislative side, and then you have reformers on the inside that want to go do that too. And so, the EPA is always, kind of the classic example, and WOTUS and the Farm Bureau did a great job of highlighting what a mess that was. But you have somebody like Lee Zeldin that's coming in now, right? And he doesn't have the worldview that the EPA should continue to find ways to interfere with what our farmers and ranchers are doing. The original conservationists, the folks who actually care what happens to their land because it's generational. But if you have some people in Washington, D.C. who are in think tanks who get put into these positions, they don't have that point of view. They're always looking for more and more ways to kind of gain more power and control. And so I just think it's a pretty unique time in that the spirit of reform is, I think, kind of the calling card of this administration. And we're here to help too. I mean, we have conversations all the time about things that pop up and some things that, again, my relationship with President Trump, with J.D. Vance, who's a close friend, and these cabinet secretaries, there's a lot of things you can work through that we're not going to issue a press release about, but you can work through it with people behind the scenes and solve problems.
Well, I thought the Doge concept with Elon Musk was awesome. You could probably cut 90% of the federal government, and no one in Missouri would even notice, or they'd appreciate it. But one thing is the USDA. He got a hold of the USDA. Now, Mr. Musk, the big computer guy from Africa, I understand coming here, but he probably came here because there's more supper here. I don't think we want to do supper like he had back home. Or he can go back there, right? At some point, do you have to pull him aside and say, hey, pal, come here. Elon, we like dinner here. We like the USDA here. You can go cut the TSA, and that'll be great, but let's not mess with dinner.
Well, Elon Musk is a very unique figure, right? An entrepreneur, a deep thinker. It's an asset to have him looking at a lot of this waste and fraud and the abuse. I think the things that are good for us right now is they are trying to move a lot of those agencies out of, USDA included, right, out of Washington, D.C. and into the heartland. That's important. But also, people, this is sort of the new media, like legacy media thing, which is they talk about like reductions in workforce or things. Really what they're trying to do is get back to 2019 spending levels. Not 1919, like 5 years ago, the amount of money that we were spending before this COVID boom, right? So if you think about it this way, we were spending about $4 trillion then in 2019, right? We take in $5 trillion now, right? We take in $5 trillion. We're spending like $7 trillion. So like if you can actually get back to a place where you're reducing some of those spending levels, right, that COVID just sort of blew out of the water, that's how you get to a balanced budget. That's how you have fiscal solvency. $36 trillion in debt, it jacks up when the government's that big of a borrow. It jacks up the cost for a loan on the combine. It jacks up a cost for a loan on a car. Your mortgage, everything gets more expensive. So if we're really going to be prosperous again, we've got to start being responsible. And I think two most important ways is spending levels and energy. So all the input costs, right? All the input costs that the farmers and ranchers have.
Yep.
If we unleash energy production, or in this country that Joe Biden declared war on, that's the secret sauce, and I think that's going to matter the most.
America has the greatest farmers ever. I'd say Missouri has the best of the best.
Well, of course.
If there's one thing we might need a foreigner to come and tell us how to do, it's probably supper, right?
Well, you look at USDA, the leadership, my goodness, tapping Brooke Rollins to be at the helm of USDA. She came and met with our American Farm Bureau Board of Directors last week. Extremely impressive. Her knowledge of domestic policy across the board. Very good in her role. She is already showing her willingness to tackle the tough issues like avian flu, putting in.
But with supper, it should be America first.
Absolutely, and she recognizes that. And in fact,
South Africa can be on the list, but it's not first, right?
Yes.
America's first.
So you look at the ag and disaster and economic assistance that you all cleared in December. That President Trump, before he was even sworn in, advocated saying, "Hey, we've got to take care of the farm community." They've made it a priority. We should start seeing assistance going out March 21st. That's the Secretary's goal. So we're already seeing. Now we need more. We need Richard Fordyce and others to get approved and be at USDA. But I'm very excited about having Brooke Rollins there as Secretary. I really.
What a big win for Missouri. to have Richard Fordyce coming to Washington
Yeah.
to help. What does a confirmation like that look like? We see these big Pete Hegseth and Cash Patel and all that. What is a confirmation for what is very important to Missouri to have a Missourian like Richard Fordyce there? What does that time frame look like?
Well, right now, so we did all the high-profile stuff, and literally just this past week kind of finished up the last of those like high-profile main cabinet members. And then now you start moving to the deputy positions, which are really important. They're the ones that are kind of the COOs of those agencies, right? Like for the Defense Department, you've got somebody who's going to come in. We talk about procurement reform, being more nimble, being smarter. That's the person that's going to be in charge of that kind of operational stuff. And so that's kind of the phase that we're in now. Then you get to some of the undersecretaries and you start moving on down the line. So the hope is that as we get into the summer, that we clear the deck on a lot of these important confirmations. Richard's a great pick. There's a lot of Missourians that have found their way into this administration, which I think is a good thing. And I've gone to bat for many of them. And I think that's a good sign, especially when you're talking about ag, right? Missouri is such a diverse place from an ag community and what we produce and what we sell. So if you come from Missouri, you have a pretty good sense of a lot of different things on the ag front. So he'll be great. Hopefully we can get to him as soon as possible.
Great. We'll be right back. We're going to talk taxes and tariffs after this.
For more than a century, the St. Louis Carpenters Union has shaped our communities. Through trusted alliances, we deliver skilled professional craftspeople while our business partners provide the kind of quality jobs that keep our economy humming. It's a blueprint that has worked since 1882. Turning Missouri into a right-to-work state stalls progress, wipes out jobs, and kills momentum. Right to work is wrong for everyone. Let's keep Missouri moving forward. Visit carpdc.org to learn more.
Missouri farmers have been doing what's best for their land for generations. After all, no one knows what it takes to feed and fuel a growing global population better than they do. So why are trial lawyers threatening Missouri farmers' best defense against weeds? Our farmers don't need to be controlled. They need to be supported. Keep glyphosate in our state. Show your support at TakeControlMissouri.com. Paid for by Modern Ag Alliance in support of Missouri farmers.
Guys, thank you so much for watching the show. I want to tell you about a new thing we're offering. It's the Missouri Times Podcast Network. You'll get this show every week. If you want to listen to it in your car, you don't have time to watch it. You'll get our Show in Missouri podcast, History of Missouri, one county at a time. You'll also get our midweek update. Once a week, I throw up the Facebook Live. We talk politics, usually eat a little lunch and discuss politics. You'll get to hear all those things come right to your phone. Subscribe to us on iTunes or Android. Missouri Times Podcast Network. Please join us and subscribe.
Missouri's childcare crisis is hurting our children, families, and even our economy. Currently, 78 Missouri counties are designated as childcare deserts, where the number of kids needing childcare exceeds the number of available options. Today, some Missouri families are spending more on childcare than housing, and Missouri's childcare shortage costs our economy $1.35 billion every year. Missouri families and businesses deserve better. Learn more at mochampionofchildren.com.
Some politicians claim cockfighting is a proud tradition, but is it really something to be proud of? Cockfighting isn't just cruel to animals, it's cruel to humans. It's linked to organized criminal activity, illegal gambling, even drug trafficking. Leading law enforcement and Christian groups have spoken out and are urging a stop to the violence. But some politicians want to give cockfighters a pass. Keep cockfighting out of our state.
Data captured by our state-of-the-art monitors helps us pinpoint the timing and location of severe weather more accurately and respond to trouble more quickly. Ameren Missouri's investment in smart technologies like this is one way we're improving reliability and restoring power faster than ever. Responding to trouble before trouble hits. That's energy at work. Ameren, Missouri.
Welcome back. This week in Missouri Politics from the United States Capitol in Washington, D.C., joined by Garrett Hawkins, the president of Rural Missouri. Big Farm Bureau Legislative Week out here. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you.
And Senator Eric Schmitt, thank you for the hospitality here in the United States Capitol, in the Senate offices. We very much appreciate you letting us have this little corner table here in Washington.
We're glad you're here.
I make a once-a-decade trip, and the hospitality's been great.
Well, we try to treat you right when you come in town.
Let's talk about taxes.
Yeah.
You've been the senator from tax cuts when you were a state senator. Then you were the treasurer from tax cuts, attorney general from tax cuts. Trump cut taxes. The economy responded. It was almost like all the stuff Ronald Reagan said he had a point.
Yeah.
Biden comes in. He wants to raise taxes. Where is Missouri? What can folks plan on their taxes being? Are you going to keep the Trump tax cuts, or are they going to go by the wayside?
No, that's the big issue. So one of the advantages, so the filibuster operates a little bit differently here than it does in the Missouri Senate. So you need 60 votes to overcome that, typically, right? And I can speak with some experience, having been in both places. Yeah. But you need 60 votes. However, when you're dealing with the reconciliation process like we are, because we have a Republican House, very slim majority, a Republican Senate, and the White House, you only need 51 votes. So we have a pretty unique opportunity, once-in-a-generation opportunity, to extend and make permanent those tax cuts from 2017. If we don't, it's a $4 trillion tax increase on the American people that touches small businesses, farmers, ranchers, middle-class families. And so it is imperative that we get those extended and made permanent so that we're not doing this nonsense every 5 years. I think that's a really important thing. And then if the Democrats want to come in and jack up prices by $4 trillion, good luck. I won't support it. They'll pay a price at the polls, but we've got to be able to make sure we handle our business this year. So that's what's happening. So now we're in these conversations about what do we want to do? We want to extend those. What's the scoring on that? And then what other kind of reductions do we want to have in spending so we actually stop spending $2 trillion more than we take in every year? That's where we're at in this process. So I'm pretty confident. One of the things, again, that I championed in the Missouri Senate when we had the first tax cut in 100 years is another thing that I'm interested in, which is those small businesses and many companies are they're not C corps, they're not corporations. They're family, they're S corps, they're LLCs, they're LLPs, right, to make sure that those tax cuts flow to those folks and that working people actually make sure that they see a tax cut. And I think that's what you saw in 2017. You saw record wage growth. It didn't matter your demographic, where you were from. We saw that record wage growth. The problem when Biden came in is they shut off energy production, spent way too much money in that COVID era, and inflation gobbled up any of those gains and then some. So if we get inflation under control, we extend the tax cuts. That's how real Americans are going to have more of their own money. So that's kind of what we're working on right now.
So drill, baby, drill.
Drill, baby, drill.
Tax cuts?
Frack, baby, frack. Everything. All of it.
All of the above.
All of the above. All of the above on the energy front. And we Garrett and I have talked about this time and time again. The regulatory reform piece and the energy piece are critical for everybody in the state, including our farmers.
Well, that underpins everything. We think about the president is so ambitious about trying to bring home critical manufacturing, right, from overseas. You can't do it without affordable, reliable energy, right? And that's why you got to get it right. You got to have common sense tax policies. You got to have good, sound energy policies, and that's the framework that's being built to bring them home.
And
that's exciting.
And I think we're building the backbone. Or my focus, having worked on economic development issues in the Missouri Senate, and now here. We've got a chance. I mean, obviously, agriculture is a big part of what we do in Missouri. It's the number one industry, no doubt. But we also have the critical minerals. If you look at the murals in the Senate hearing room, the Senate lounge, it's sort of an ode to all these, it's zinc and it's copper, all this stuff. The reason why a lot of people came to Missouri, the rivers came together and we had all these natural resources, right? That's how we became the second state west of the Mississippi. So we have all that stuff now, and we need to bring our supply chains home. We should not be relying on China for materials to build our fighter jets, and we do right now. There's no reason in the world why Missouri can't be a hub for that. There's also no reason why, and we're working on this and got some funding in the budget for on the NDAA to make St. Louis the defense tech capital of the United States of America. We've got a lot of great assets. Boeing's there. You've got a lot of emerging businesses. And then you have the animal health corridor. You have life sciences, plant sciences. There's a lot of great things going on in Missouri. And those are the things I talked to Howard Lutnick about, who's the new Commerce Secretary. Those are the things I talked to Pete Hegseth about, who's the new Defense Secretary. So, it was fun to be on the campaign trail. I loved it. I loved going to those rallies with President Trump on Trump Force One. But now we're in the place where you have these relationships and you want to make sure that you're advocating for your state, and which is why this is a lot of fun right now.
You talk about drill, baby, drill. I think a gun store owner in West Plains is like, let's do it. Talk about cutting taxes. I'd say a farmer in Cameron's there. You might even have like a purple-haired Starbucks worker in Chesterfield, like tax cuts. Tariffs makes me a little nervous. Not quite sure, Garrett. I think we're all preaching. We're all saying amen, and the tariff thing makes me a little nervous. President Trump hasn't enacted them. But if he does, that's going to cause pain.
Well, I think you have to look at these in a few different buckets. The first, when President Trump was in office the first time, he enacted tariffs and we didn't see inflation, right? We didn't see inflation because all the other economic policies that he enacted, energy, tax cuts, allowed us to move forward. And we took in $200 billion. That's principally with China. Our reliance on Chinese goods then went from about 23% to 13% as we bring those supply chains home. China, I think you can put in one particular category. As it relates to Canada and Mexico, I think this is a negotiation. It's more about the drug war than it is any kind of trade war, because you have enough fentanyl flowing across the northern border with Canada to kill 9.7 million Americans every year. Canada does not do a very good job securing the border. There are known terrorists who are crossing that northern border. And so I think this is a negotiation with President Trump. And I think the overarching theme here is that I think we are moving into a new era where the American people, including American farmers who want access to markets, are tired of getting ripped off by other countries. The United States of America has taken this position over the years where our goods are taxed through tariffs and other trade policies to a much greater extent than we tax here when people want access to the greatest market in the world. What President Trump is trying to say is, we're going to treat you like you treat us. And the net result of that will be they want to be in our market. They'll reduce their trade barriers that allow us to access markets, whether it's ag or
will that add up?
So, our farmers trust President Trump, that there is a plan, that he is playing a long ball game. The difference from the first Trump administration is the farm economy is not great right now. It's weaker than it was at the time. So, but they trust that the president is going to make it right and help through a painful time. And we hope the pain is minimal or at least short-lived. Here's what's exciting, though. In my 20 years of dealing in ag and farm policy, you have administrations that take years to negotiate free trade agreements, and there's not a lot done on the back end to make sure that those trade agreements are enforced. Right. What's happening now is the president's putting in place a team that not only wants to use tariffs as a hammer, which again can cause unease, but the hammer is used to bring people to the table to address this litany of issues that we have dealt with for years. Think about the European Union. Why is it that they export twice as much here in the form of ag and food products than we get into their market? It's not because of tariffs, Scott. It's because of all these sanitary and phytosanitary trade barriers that they put in place, from how we wash our chickens to what hormones are used in livestock production. They throw up all these barriers, including their new deforestation policy, which is a load of baloney and should only apply to Brazil and South America. So that's what's exciting, is that the president is putting in place a team that is very serious about addressing these technical barriers to trade and actually diversifying the trade portfolio when we look at other countries.
Yeah, because to your point, I'm glad you brought that up, because it's these other trade barriers that exist that people don't talk about, and it doesn't have a word like tariff that people have learned about in grade school, that these countries put in place that really restrict our access to those markets. You can't sell a car. You can't sell an American car in Europe. You can't do it because of all the restrictions they have in place. And so, and China might talk nicely about things, or even friendly countries like Japan or South Korea. Yeah. But guess what? Our farmers are actually still being punished in ways that they shouldn't be. So.
You've said it before. You're not from Billions. You're from Bridgeton. Yeah. You understand working folks. You actually know the President of the United States better than probably maybe any other Missourian. Do you believe the pain will be worth it on the other side?
Well, I disagree with the assumption. I actually think President Trump has done this before, and we didn't see inflation. That's what you worry about, right? Is that costs would go up. That didn't happen the first time. And so I'm fully confident that when we get through all of this, all the policies are going to be put in place on energy policy, on tax policy, on trade policy, ramping up our industrial base from a.
I think we were getting ripped off. I think you're right about
Absolutely, we're getting ripped off.
Do you think we can?
And by the way, this is what President Trump won rural America by a wide margin, because rural America understands it's not fair how we're treated by other countries. It's not fair that we subsidize the social welfare governments of Europe and have to defend them, and they don't step up to the plate. That's the whole debate about what's going on in Ukraine. Europe needs to step up in a much more meaningful way. They also understand viscerally that we have been ripped off for generations. This isn't after World War II and these countries are trying to get back on their feet. We're well beyond all that now, right? Our companies, our farmers, our consumers need to be able to access other markets around the world. And so President Trump, he's going to be tough on that. And he ran on that. Like, this is nothing new. He did it the first time. And he said, I was with the rallies, he's like, we are going to use all of these economic tools to get an even playing field with the people who have been taking advantage of us. And I think rural America understands that better than almost anybody else.
I was at the State Fair with you early on in the Ukraine war. And at the time, everybody was putting stuff on their Facebook page and there's pro. I guess I just reflexively remember the Rocky movies. I was pro-Ukraine, right? And you said, I don't know about this. I don't think it's 'cause the American people are going to pay for this long term. I think you might have been proven right about that.
Like when I was with masks and indoctrination in school, Scott, there's something to be said. But it's, listen, the American taxpayers tapped out. We can't have blank checks for endless wars. And no one has ever articulated, this is the problem now. What's the alternative? President Trump ran on wanting to have peace. Yeah. I mean, this used to be something my liberal friends used to believe in free speech and peace, and now they're the party of censorship and endless wars. President Trump is on the world stage, literally the only person on the planet who can deliver that kind of peace in Ukraine. We should all be rooting for that, because here's the flip side of that. There's no plan. They've never been able to articulate how much, what does victory look like, how do you get there, because they are in a bloody meat grinder stalemate right now.
End of the day, parts of that were Ukraine are going to be Russia, right?
This is what's happened in Europe for a long time, and there's all part of negotiation. You have to get to the parties to the table, but this can't keep going on. There's not enough munitions, even if we wanted to send another $200 billion over there, which of course I would object to. We can't make enough stuff for their own defense to do it, because Europe, through their deindustrialization policies, can't produce anything. They buy it from us, and we don't have the capacity. And the final point I'll make here is, we are fooling ourselves. We are entering an age of American realism, which I appreciate, in scarcity. We can't be everywhere all at once all the time. It's not realistic, and it's a lie. So if you're building a bunch of tanks for a land war in Europe, you are necessarily now making a decision that you're not making enough long-range fires for our chief adversary in the Pacific, which is China. So the priority for me is defend the homeland, understand China's our chief adversary, have Europe step up in a much more meaningful way. That's kind of rebalancing this alliance.
Garrett Hawkins, thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate it. Senator Eric Schmitt, thank you so much for the hospitality. I appreciate you having us here in Washington, D.C.
Good to be here, my friend.
We'll be back in 2 weeks after spring break for This Week in Missouri Politics.
This Week in Missouri Politics is sponsored by the Missouri Automobile Dealers Association, Ameren, Spire, the United Electric Cooperative, and the Missouri Association of Career Fire Protection Districts.